Hello, Night Nation. I'm Trylko from the Sons of UCF, joined by Eric Lopez of the Black and Gold Banneret. Welcome to Around the Kingdom. Elo, hello.
Hello, Trace. Coming up on the fastest UCF show around. UCF football. It's a week away from game week. What do we know about this team? What's the biggest questions? Which is the most confident games you have in UCF wins and the least confident? We'll discuss all of that. Plus, is Trace more confident in UCF men's soccer or Orlando City? He'll tell us. I'll force him. I'll put him on the table coming up on this edition of Around the Kingdom.
Before we get going with all of that, let us welcome in the third member of our team. He is Adam Eaton from the Sons of UCF. Keeps an eye on the clock. Keeps us on our toes. Adam, hello.
Hello, gents. I did not see that on the rundown, Elo. I'll have to recheck my rundown here. But is this really the fastest show? Because I've heard some people listen to the Suns pod on like 4X. So maybe this is not the fastest show anymore. I don't know.
I didn't know 4X existed. I got to look
I didn't know it existed either. All right, Elo. Third scrimmage in the books, and the Knights have transitioned into game week prep for New Hampshire. What you've heard from Coach Malzahn, offensive coordinator Tim Harris, as well as players, what are some takeaways you've had now through 3 weeks plus of preseason camp?
That apparently we have 4 running backs that are super studs, and I have no idea how they're going to get all carries or touches, Trace, because every time they've done these scrimmage, it seems like a different running back did awesome. Like Montgomery's been an MVP during out this practice, right? You've got Penny Boone, you've got RJ, you've got, Johnny is being Johnny, which was a word that was used. I don't know. Like, I don't remember a backfield, Trace. Maybe you tell me I'm wrong. You've covered a lot of these in person and lead of these prisoners. I don't remember this many running backs at UCF being talked about at like this crew has. Heck, even Gage got some love from Coach Malzahn about what he's been doing. So it's intriguing, but I don't know what to make of it. Is it just smokescreen? Is it legit? And if so, how are we going to keep everybody happy, Trace?
Well, how can you keep everybody happy? Could you have too many guys? Could you misuse them? Possibly. Gus Malzahn likes to lean on a couple of guys. I would argue they have not always utilized Johnny Richardson and his speed to maximum ability. So you want a lot of guys for depth, but could you have too many guys? Could you possibly spread carries around, make everybody happy? It seems a difficult task, but better to have this abundance of riches.
The penalties got cut down in the third scrimmage. That seems to be head in the positive direction. The defense forced some turnovers, Trace, which is something they're working on. But again, is that good because the defense is creating turnovers? Is that bad because the offense is like turning the ball over? That's always it's hard to kind of figure out what's good or not about scrimmages that you can't see.
Well, that's certainly the case. It does open up, though, a lot of questions, Elo, right, as we transition into that first week.
Yeah, I think there's questions. I think we're also tired of talking, right? The talking season's coming to an end. That's it.
Are you saying that really? You're on multiple shows every
Tell
week.
Me about it. It's like, come on, let's get to a game. Although I would argue that the season opener is just another scrimmage. We'll save that for.
Are you? I know you don't like that, but what would you rather? You want to go back to Murderers Row? Isn't the the conference schedule Murderers Row enough plus the Gator game? I mean, you do need some games to work out some problems.
I think other schools figure it out. I mean, Florida State's going all the way to Ireland to play a conference game. I don't know. Playing FCS schools, what does it do for you? It's a scrimmage. I'm not too, but that's one question I have is how much we're going to learn about that scrimmage. What are some other questions, Trace? We've talked about offensive questions, defensive questions, coaching questions. What other questions do you have?
I want to see if we see a more disciplined UCF team. It is something that Gus Malzahn has talked about. You heard 18 penalties in that first scrimmage, which is not entirely unusual for a first scrimmage. Cut down significantly. What was it? Just 3 announced by Gus Malzahn following the last scrimmage. But what do they do in real game action? And what kind of penalties are they? Do they shoot themselves in the foot? That I am looking for. So I see value in that New Hampshire game. Also, how long we're going to see guys play in that one and, how much work a KJ Jefferson needs in that game to feel as comfortable as possible in the offense.
I still got questions. Special teams. Are we going to be a good return special teams? How is Colton Boomer going to do, Trace? To me, that's a question. And I do think that will be interesting to see in the New Hampshire game more so. I mean, they should run over New Hampshire. But I am curious how the special teams looks here in the first couple of weeks of the season. Don't you, Trace? I mean, I have questions.
Yeah, and it's something I've said. Colton Boomer cannot be perfect kicking in field goals or extra points. He's going to miss something somewhere along the line. I want to see how he reacts following a miss, because if he misses 2 in a row, I think that's when the doubts creep into his head, Gus Malzahn's, and the fan base. So is he going to miss some? Yeah, but I want to see how he reacts following a miss of some kind.
Does it matter, though, what kind of kick he misses? Like, if he misses a 48-yarder, I mean, are we really going to, start questioning him if we're missing a 48-yarder? I think that's unfair. Like, I hope we don't get into that where we're going to scrutinize every kick.
He can't hit a lineman. Okay, so he can't do that. But I do think we're going to need real games, and I don't know that something along the lines of special teams is going to be satisfied with the performance against New Hampshire. Knights 42.5-point favorites in that one, Elo. Point spreads are coming out throughout the season. What's your guess? We can track this throughout the season. Of course, it changes based on injuries and game situations, but going in on that 12-game schedule, how many do you think the Knights are underdogs this season?
Well, I think they'll be underdogs at Florida. Probably around a 3 to 4.5 point favorite, just because Florida's the home team night game there. I think that's definitely one. You've brought up in the past TCU that they could be an underdog there. I think it depends on how TCU looks early, but I tend to agree. I think TCU, they'll probably be an underdog there. I think they'll be an underdog at West Virginia for sure. And then depending on how Utah looks, maybe they're a slight underdog against Utah or maybe not. I think that's going to be, but I would say about 3 to 4 games, they'll be an underdog.
Wow, 3 to 4. I credit at CFB Knights _ with this topic on social media. I have them as an underdog at TCU. To your point, how much are we going to learn with them playing New Hampshire and Sam Houston State? I don't know that that's enough, but maybe it's a pick 'em kind of situation if TCU starts off a little bit rough. But I've got TCU, Florida. I think they're an underdog at Iowa State. Iowa State returns a lot on defense. I think the game time in that one may determine that a little bit as well. Arizona, space game. I'm not convinced that not only that UCF be favored in that one, that they even win that one. Arizona is a strong.
Hello?
Well,
Space jerseys undefeated. Hello?
I got to concur with UCF Mike on this one. Law of averages at some point kick in. And if there was magic in these space games uniforms, why do they wear them every game? And then they just be undefeated all the time. So I'm not sure I believe in the power of the space game. West Virginia, definite underdog at this point. If the season is unraveled for the Mountaineers, then maybe not. And Utah. But if Utah's wrapped things up, maybe there's less to play for. But I go in with 6 games, Elo, that the Knights are underdogs.
6 games? Are you kidding me?
Well, you got to win in 9-10 games and KJ Jefferson for Heisman. I'm a little more skeptical.
I can't believe you're going against the Space U. I mean, JP Gilbert is disgusted with you right now. I hope you will.
About something, maybe not even that.
But very fair. You know what he's not going to be disgusted by? Some good piece of content, folks, you can check out on Sons of UCF right now on the site. Over-unders for all the college football projections, Trace Trylko. UCF at 7.5. Your reaction to the over-under there? Too high? Just too low?
That's an Adam Eaton special, trying to get me on the record by putting in the half, which I don't like. We're going to save our actual game-by-game predictions. We got a scheduled draft coming up after our silly game, but 7.5, I think, is the right sweet spot for a number, right? I don't think the Knights fans are going to be happy with 7 wins, unless that includes the win over the Gators. I've felt that Gus Malzahn is a 4-loss coach till he proves me otherwise. You're a little more bullish on the season. Knights have a lot of new faces, but a lot of returning faces, more a veteran team. He's got the quarterback he wants. It seems on paper to be a step up over John Rice Plumlee, but I think 7.5 is the right number, and I'm not going to be surprised entirely either way it goes. But Knights, most fans would say, need to beat that 7.5, Elo.
I'm getting my wallet. I'm getting my phone. I'm calling certain people. Go on the over. Over 7.5 UCF. Let's go.
Well, it makes sense, right? You've got them as only 4 games in which they're underdogs, so of course.
Yeah, I absolutely. I think 7.5 is good value considering they have 7 home games. That's a very good value if you believe in this team being. Remember, they were 6-7 last year. That's blowing the Baylor game, massive blown, and losing a couple games by 1 possession, literally a 2-pointer and a 1-pointer. I think a bounce here or there. You can get to 8 easily. I'm not saying that they're going to run roughshod, but 7.5, I think, is good value.
It probably is good value, but how much you putting on it?
Your mortgage.
No, you're not putting my mortgage.
Your mortgage. Yeah, I mean, if they don't get it, we're gonna have a new co-host on this show around the team. Adam and I will have to find somebody. That's kind of the bet. We'll get Andrew Trylko to take over.
I'm sure he'd hop in right there. All right, let's bring in the aforementioned Adam Eaton and our silly game.
All right, before we get to that, gentlemen, don't forget we're brought to you by the Cure Bowl, December 20th, Camping World Stadium. You can catch one of the best bowl games of the college football season. The matchup is always Orlando versus Cancer when it's the Staff DNA Cure Bowl. They'll have events going on throughout the week. They'll have, obviously, a good game time action as well. So if you want to get involved with that, go to curebowl.com, get your tickets, and you can be a part of the festival. All right, gentlemen. This week, I got a game for you, as I always do for Silly Game. I'm going to give you a statement of phrase. You give me a word to describe this, what you feel when you hear this statement, what your reaction is, all right? So here's the first one. Elo, I'll start with you. Oklahoma State putting QR codes on the helmets for NIL donations is what to you?
A sign of the times. That's where we're headed with all this. We're just going to put stuff all over the jersey, the helmet, anything to promote, anything to donate money. That's what we're going to be at. It's a fitting of the times now.
It's brilliant marketing, and it doesn't matter if it was a copycat of anything UCF did previously. Brilliant.
Those QR codes seem kind of small. I feel like it's going to be tough to zoom in on those during the game and get your donation off. But to your point, Trace, obviously UCF previously did that during the spring game. All right, the next one, Trace, this one goes to you first. Announced today, UCF men's basketball set a record for season tickets sold. That means what?
Genuine energy and excitement about this program. A lot of new faces, a lot of talent on this roster. Perhaps the most talented roster of the Johnny Dawkins era. And I think based on the enthusiasm, all of the energy of last season and where the Knights went in its first season in the Big 12, I think that's genuine. I think that's a good sign.
I'm going to say cha-ching. That's people are revenue is going to be made.
Was this one word? I went more than one word.
I went cha-ching. Well, I think we're breaking the rules here. The one thing I know for sure, as annoyed as JP Gilbert was with you in the last segment about the Citronaut jerseys, he's got to be ecstatic about this because that guy's going to clean a fortune with his season tickets. I think it's revenue. It's cha-ching. I think UCF's going to make good money with basketball. That's huge.
News this week that Mikey Williams officially enrolled at UCF, so all on purposes, he'll be on the basketball team. Last one this week, gentlemen, was the first week of classes for UCF students. I want to hearken you back to your time at UCF, your first day on campus as a student. Describe your first day on campus, Elo.
Oh, man.
It was strange because to go to the football game, I had to go all the way to the formerly Citrus Bowl just to see a football game. So these kids nowadays, the Clay Pascos of the world, are spoiled. That's all I'm saying.
I remember very little about all of that at this point, Adam, except I parked a million miles away from wherever I needed to be. I was a little confused by parking on day one.
There was a lot of construction, too. A lot of construction on campus.
A lot of cats, too, as I recall, in certain parts of the campus. So, all right, that's our silliness. Adam, don't go anywhere. An extended amount of time with you during this week's Around the Kingdom as we have our scheduled draft. Very simple here, folks. 12 games in the regular season. 3 of us. We're each going to pick 3. The 3 left over, the audience gets, and then we'll keep track of it throughout the season. Our scheduled draft. And, we're high tech around here. So, Adam, how are we doing this? Have you got a predetermined order of who picks first, second, third, and a little snake draft back and forth?
I did. I spun the wheel of integrity. First pick in the draft goes to Eric Lopez. Second pick in the draft goes to yours truly. Trace, you have the third pick.
Ooh. Well, I'm not getting New Hampshire, am I?
No, you're not. I will be getting New Hampshire gladly, getting that big primary there. New Hampshire will be my number 1 overall pick. That'll be my Wimbayamba of this draft.
And right, I'm not getting Sam Houston State.
With my first pick, I'm going to take the Bearcats with a K. Sam Houston will be drafted to Team Sons of UCF.
And this followed what you and UCF Mike talked about on the podcast, right? You put confidence points, and those were your most confident games, if I recall.
You are accurate.
Yeah. All right. So I've got picks 3 and 4 now. Is that correct? Okay.
Yes.
With the third pick, I'm going with another Bearcat. Hey, how many schools get 2 Bearcats on the roster in the same or on the schedule in the same season? Cincinnati with the 3 pick. Put me down for that. All right. Snake back around. BYU with my next pick.
I suspected you might say that, Trylko. All right.
Is it following form?
This is where it gets interesting. Yeah, it is following form. This is what gets interesting because there's that middle of the pack games where, maybe there's some coin tosses. But as I said in the Suns pod this week, I'm going to prioritize home games over road games until UCF can prove to me they can win on the road. So with my pick, I'm going to take Colorado. Early season home game, could be a noon kickoff situation. We don't know what Colorado is going to be at this point. So give me Colorado. I'm going to take the home game at this point.
Come on. That was my
always
pick.
Got the prop and the histrionics.
Man, it's a great pick, Adam.
Thank you.
It's a good pick. It's a really good pick because we don't know if Colorado's any good. All right, I guess I'll go. I will go with my next pick. Your philosophy is very good. By the way, I believe we've already taken up. How many home games have already gone in the draft? What is it, 5?
Yes.
That is incredible. That is incredible.
5 for 5. Two left on that schedule.
Well, somebody at some point is going to have to take a road game, but it's not going to be me because unlike Trace, I believe in the jersey, the power of blue, of naval blue, the Canaveral blue. Space you, give me Arizona. We don't lose it. We're not losing.
All right. So this is now
Elo has the next pick as well.
I know.
Elo is the next pick. Okay.
Yeah, snake trap. It's your rules, Trey.
Yeah, that's right.
I will go with
one more home game.
I am going to go TCU. I'm going to go bold. I'll go the first road game. We'll go with the Horn. UCF has good history in TCU recently with men's basketball. So I'm going to go. Hopefully that translates to football.
Let's change me up a little bit because on the Sun pod this week, I said Gus is always good for one head-scratching loss every year, a game you're not supposed to lose. See Navy twice, see ECU. I have a sneaky feeling that Arizona State game could be that game this year. It could be a late-night kickoff, Pac-12 after dark. We know Kenny Dillingham and Gus maybe aren't seeing eye to eye, so that one scares me a little bit. But then I'm left with just Utah at home, which could be scary. But I'm going to go Utah at home. I'm going to say UCF can maybe win a home game. I think Trey said this earlier. Perhaps Utah's not playing for much at that point. So give me Utah for my final pick.
Wow. Neither of you believe in the Gator game. You don't think UCF wins in Gainesville? All this talk about how this was the whole season. You got to beat the Gators in Gainesville. I, however, am not that confident that they're going to beat the Gators in Gainesville. I'm not willing to take my last pick with that one. I do think they beat Arizona State on the road. I think, in fact, that's the easiest road game on the schedule, certainly on paper. So I'm going to take them on the road.
Spoken from a guy who just came back from there, baby. Nice. Sounds to me like Tracy did some scouting at him there.
Hey, good branding on Arizona State across downtown Phoenix. I saw their light rail go by, and the whole thing was decked out with the Arizona sports teams, softball included in that, Elo. So, I'm going with the Arizona State. So did you jot these down, Adam? Do you have a review of these? Elo with New Hampshire, Arizona, and TCU. So 2 out of 3 home games, including space. You've got Sam Houston, Colorado, and Utah. So you got a full home slate.
All 3 homes. Yep.
And I've got Cincinnati, BYU. I feel very confident about those 2.
Well, that leaves the poor audience with West Virginia, Iowa State, and Florida.
Florida. But the audience, everybody thinks that the Knights are going to win in Gainesville. So next week.
It's going to give them more reason to be upset if we lose to Florida. We just gave them more ammunition.
Next week on Around the Kingdom, we're going to talk about the game Gus steals that he's not expected to win, and the one you kind of tease maybe in Arizona State that they should win but might lose. So, all right. Thank you, Adam, for participating in this week's scheduled draft, Elo.
I know. I'm bummed out. That was fun. Certainly a key part for UCF to have success and win the majority of those games is their culture. You hear Gus talk about the culture about the teams. You hear coaches talk about that all the time, Trace. How do you feel about UCF's football culture?
I think every school in the country is talking about how they're coming together as a team. I think something that offensive coordinator Tim Harris Jr. said recently was resonated with me. How do they respond during adversity? I'll give them credit for this. There were moments of adversity, the losing streak last season, and they seemingly did not fall apart. I think that's harder to accomplish when you have an influx of new players and so many through the transfer portal. I mean, we've talked about KJ Jefferson. I'm not saying he's not a team guy, but hey, he's only going to be on this team a couple more months, no matter how the season plays out, right? So, how they are able to establish a culture, we really don't know. It's nice to have barbecues and pool parties and all those sorts of things, but what happens in tight moments? What happens when maybe you lose a game you're not expected to? How do they keep the culture together? And I think that's going to be a challenge for programs across the country because of the transfer portal.
I think that's a great point. With all the constant changes on the roster, 40-some players different new now. How do you build that, and how do they respond when you get hit in the face like you're going to in that football season? As early as maybe that TCU game you've been talking about, Trace, that we just did the draft. I mean, 1 or 2 losses can turn into 4 losses if you don't have great culture. So hopefully for UCF, they have a better culture than maybe, I don't know if they've had bad culture. I think people, when you say you have bad culture, that means, oh, there's some malcontent. No, I don't think that is. It just, sometimes teams don't mesh well, right, Trace?
Well, I think you got to go back to the end of the O'Leary era where the culture wasn't right at the end and there was some finger pointing.
There's no doubt about that.
And there was some quit there. And really since there's been a stronger culture across multiple coaches.
Listen, that 2015 quit on that season faster than J-Lo quit on Ben Affleck, which they just got a divorce as we're recording this show. Best wishes to J-Lo.
Again?
What? I feel, don't you feel sorry for them? Come on. But look, that's going to, how do they have the culture? On the opposite end, they had great culture over the Frost years, right? 16, 17. You could sense it in those 2 years. We'll see what this team has.
Well, perfect segue to a topic that you discussed in the aftermath of the announcement, the surprise announcement of Shaquem Griffin being recognized during the kickoff luncheon with an announcement that he'll be joining the UCF Athletics Hall of Fame, a slam dunk determination there. He's a culture guy, right? And continues to be. That's what you talked about in your article at the Black and Gold Banneret.
I think he's the best ambassador right now of UCF football, past, present, future. I think he's the guy. We could talk about, I think he's also the best defensive player there. I know some will say Bruce Miller, but look, I mean, Trace, you were there in Atlanta and Mercedes-Benz against Auburn. He was the best football player on the field that day. They don't win that game without him. And I think he's one of the great UCF stories I've heard, Trace. Like, Knight fans will, every time he will walk into that stadium, he's going to get a standing ovation. He's one of the great stories of UCF. And I dare anybody to name me a better ambassador than him. He had a great speech for this team. He was surprised at the luncheon afterwards, being inducted. He's going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer, the first from that 2017 team. And I think it's well-deserved.
You know who likely agrees with you? It's Gus Malzahn. Andrew Trylko, the Sons of UCF, asked Coach Malzahn at the presser following the scrimmage over the weekend about Shaquem. And, well, Gus remembers him very well in that Peach Bowl and UCF's win over Auburn and how he was just a force to be reckoned with. He played with a passion and a fire, always wanting to prove more, that he was more than what people judged him to be. And I do think he's a good ambassador. I mean, I think there are other guys that are good ambassadors. BJ Taylor comes to mind for men's basketball. Taco Fall, along with Shaquem Griffin, named recently to the Big 12 Advisory Council. So a lot of contenders, obviously, for that recognition. But you have a good one in Shaquem Griffin, and it'd be interesting to see what his association will be with UCF. There's opportunity there for UCF to leverage that good name and that reputation of Shaquem Griffin.
And I think, too, when we look at the UCF defense and you look at certain players, aren't we looking for that Shaquem Griffin passion, that intensity, that making big plays? Isn't that what we're starving for, too? I think he has set the standard as an individual defender moving forward, what fans expect. It reminds me of some of the pro sports teams, like the Buccaneer fans. I have a lot of Tampa Bay Buccaneer fans, and they think, hey, every defense should be like Warren Sapp and the Derek Brookses of the world, and John Lynch. I think Shaquem Griffin represents that for the identity of UCF defense for years and years to come.
And I will say this, Elo, I think with every passing year past that 2017, 2018 teams, we realize more and more how special those teams were, how it's not easy to duplicate those seasons and the efforts of guys like Shaquem Griffin. How many times do you find a Shaquem or a Mackenzie Milton? UCF has struggled to find guys like that again.
And was fortunate because of the Frost staff, was able to shine after the O'Leary staff clearly didn't think he would play at all.
But what if the portal had existed then? That's a topic for another time.
Gotta go there. Well, talk about duplicating. UCF men's soccer will get underway this upcoming Thursday night, ranked 19th in the country. Last year, Scott Calibrese's company was ranked as high as number one, the first UCF team ever to be ranked number one, but faded down the stretch. Didn't win the Sun Belt Championship, got upset in the opening round of the NCAA tournament. They do return a core of that team led by Luca Dorado and Anderson Rosa. Trace, I know you had a good chance recently, the chance to talk to Scott Calabrese one-on-one. What's your thoughts on the Knights 2024 season here for UCF men's soccer?
A little preview of that conversation that'll come out on the Sons of UCF YouTube channel. That I asked Coach Calabrese, isn't it interesting the growth of the program and its culture, right? That there's disappointment amongst players, coaches, and the fan base that a team that went to number one and, as you said, faded down the stretch, that somehow it's considered a disappointing season when, in fact, it was really, by many accounts, a great season. I think it's also interesting. We've talked about this in other sports. I think you know this very well in softball. When you have so many returning players, those super seniors, can you get what you hope to get out of guys like Anderson and Luca Dorado? Will they give you those performances? They say they're coming back with more to prove, but, these are older guys now. Maybe the passion is not the same as it was a couple of seasons for them. They've got to prove that.
Well, I think to expand on that is, which UCF team do we see? Do we see the team that climbed to being ranked number one in the country, or the team that kind of limped in at the end? Anderson Rosa told us recently at Media Day that he was drafted in the MLS draft, passed on that because he didn't win a trophy. That's a big deal to them. They didn't win that Sun Belt. They were 45 minutes away from winning the Sun Belt Championship last year. It didn't happen. They feel strongly they could do this. Calabrese has built an incredible schedule. I'm going to say this right now, Trace. With all due respect to your beloved Orlando City soccer, this is the best soccer team in Orlando. By far, it's the best product. I dare you, Trace. Do you have more confidence in UCF men's soccer or your beloved Orlando City? They are a season ticket holder.
That one's simple. UCF men's soccer. I will add this, Elo. After the mic was off with Coach Calabrese, I said, that phrase, you hear it in sports all the time, act like you've been there before. You know what? This team hadn't been number one before, and it isn't easy to be adjusted to that. I think they've experienced that now and may deal better with loftier expectations now that they've experienced some of those things. Women's soccer off to a good start. We'll be quick on this one, Elo. 5-1 win at FAU. They have a home opener this week. Promising start. I know it's just one match, but you like the offensive output.
It did. Eddie, who's a young freshman out of Nigeria, there had a lot of high expectations on her. Got a goal in 3 minutes in. They may have more firepower offensively than they've had in a little while. We'll see. It's just FAU. By the way, how odd was that to watch that match at a football stadium? FAU has a tradition of playing the opening soccer match in their football stadium.
I like that, though. I wouldn't mind men's.
Would you want to see UCF do that in the bounce house? You want to see them play?
I think as a one-off, yeah, I wouldn't mind.
They got Utah Valley on Thursday. They're a good defensive team. Then they go to Florida. The big one to watch, September 1st against Georgia. Top 16 team. I think they're a College Cup contender. I think we'll learn more about women's soccer at that point, but a good start, encouraging, I think, with their offense and the balance they look like. Chloe Netzel looked phenomenal in her second year as a Knight.
Stay healthy. Don't test all that depth. All right, time to bring back Adam and anything we may have gotten right or wrong.
All right, you guys were talking about win totals. ESPN Predictor. I don't know what you do with this, but ESPN has UCF as a less than 50% favorite to win 4 games. Iowa State, West Virginia, TCU, and Florida. Only 4 games that essentially ESPN has UCF as an underdog. Do with that what you will. Elo, I need to get a second look. That wallet you had looked a little George Costanza-esque, so we need to look at that later on. You talk about culture, 43 new players for the Knights this upcoming season. Shaquem Griffin, check out this 2-year run for Shaquem Griffin. 33.5 tackles for loss, 18.5 sacks, 2 interceptions, 11 pass defense, 5 fumble recoveries, 2 forced fumbles, and a touchdown. That's quite a 2-year stretch for Shaquem Griffin in 2016 and 2017. And I'm all for the soccer and a football stadium, but we need a better camera angle than we had at that FAU game. That camera angle was not going to work for me.
Thank you, Adam. One more thing before we go. Elo, which Big 12 team offers the biggest bang for the buck? BetKansas.com ranked all the teams for football based on average ticket price for the home opener, game experience rating, and the winning percentage at the first home game over the past 5 seasons. UCF comes in third, just ahead of UCF Oklahoma State. Number 1 overall, best bang for the buck, Cincinnati. Well, they've had some success prior to last season, at least. All right, look for new episodes midweek every week on the Sons of UCF YouTube channel. Drops later into the audio feed. For Adam Eaton, Eric Lopez, I'm Trylko. Thanks, everyone, for joining us for this week's Around the Kingdom.